I hate to take your break, but at some point we do need to talk.
Okay, sounds good.
We are going live.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Today is Friday, April 16th. It's 9:04 a.m. and this is a meeting of the Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee. Our first order of business is to address we actually have a total of 5 gubernatorial appointees, but one of them, Chair Diane Snelling of NRB, just arrived in committee this week, but the other 4 we've all received, assigned them to committee members, and everyone's received, I believe, a copy of the resume or CV of each candidate or each nominee. So I thought we would just go through, vote those 4, and I requested some information from the Senate Secretary to confirm the procedure, and I will check that this morning before we adjourn, so we all know precisely what we have to do in the virtual world to turn in to get it on the calendar, Senate calendar. Okay, so Senator
Mr. Chairman.
McCormick?
Yeah, thanks. If you remember, I had said you had asked for preferences, and I had said I was willing to do anyone, though, and everyone else had a preference. So they all got taken up, and I had no one to report. And Diane is an old friend of mine, and I would be happy to report her.
Okay, well, there we go. I was going to suggest the very same thing. That way, everyone's got somebody to report.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. She has already submitted her resume, so Jude can provide that to you if you do not already have it.
I have it.
And she's scheduled to come in next week, so that if we do, I think traditionally on the floor, we handle them all on Fridays. So if next Friday turns into a confirmation day, I'm not sure if it is or is not going to, we would have, everyone would have theirs ready to go. So with that, our first nominee for appointment for confirmation to consider is Secretary Julie Moore. And Senator Campion, you are still our clerk, is that correct?
I am.
Okay. That's the motion would be to approve the nomination. Well, actually, I can't make the motion. So the chair would welcome a motion from a member of the committee to approve Julie Moore as Secretary of the Agency of Natural Resources. Senator McCormick?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay. I regret that Senator McDonald is not here. So,
is it possible to keep this open,
yes,
so that,
right,
out of respect for?
Yeah, let's keep it open. Looks like we may have to do that for 4 of them at the moment. Okay, so with that, then would the clerk please? We'll keep the vote open, and would the clerk please call the roll?
Senator McCormick,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator McDonald is absent. Senator Campion votes yes. Senator Bray.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So then let's move on to trying to do this in alphabetical order. So that would be Louis Porter as the Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife. Is there a nomination to approve Mr. Porter as Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Senator Westman. Any further discussion? Okay.
You want to just bring Senator McDonald up to date?
Yep, here he
Okay,
comes.
thanks.
Good morning, Senator McDonald.
Hey.
We have just started voting confirmations for the appointees, the gubernatorial appointees. So we have voted, we just concluded voting Julie Moore as Secretary of A&R and held the vote open since we knew you'd be arriving shortly. So if you're ready to consider that question, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, including to call the roll for you. The question is
It's just, Senator McDonald, we're approving Secretary Moore as Secretary of the agency.
Senator
Yeah.
McDonald votes yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great.
So, Mr. Chair, had you already asked me to call the roll for the next person?
Yes, that'd be
Mr. Porter.
Commissioner Porter.
Great, thank you. Senator McCormick,
Yes.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator Westman.
Yes.
I vote yes. Senator Campion and Senator Bray.
Yes, thank you.
So 2500 votes.
Okay. Then moving along, we have Commissioner Peter Walk renominated to continue as Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation at ANR. Looking for a motion to confirm.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you, Senator Westman. Any further discussion on Commissioner Walk? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll, please.
Senator McCormick,
Yes.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator Campion votes yes. Senator Bray.
Yes, thank you.
5-0.
And that brings us to Commissioner Michael Snyder to be reappointed as Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation. Looking for a nomination to confirm that appointment.
So move.
Thank you, Senator Westman. Any committee discussion? Senator Campion.
So I just want to thank the chair for bringing Commissioner Snyder in yesterday. It continues to be important to me to dig into, what's happening out there in our forests, as I'm sure it is for all committee members. So yes, so I appreciate that very much, and I look forward to digging into this issue further. And as I've said to the chair, I'm optimistic that we are going to make the necessary steps, take the necessary steps to indeed either implementing the plan that Commissioner Snyder has or a version of it. But I look forward to digging into this issue even more. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for bringing him in so we had an opportunity to hear what he had to say prior to this vote.
Well, thanks for the suggestion. It's 74% of the landmass in the state of Vermont, so it is by far the biggest environmental resource that we're charged with helping manage. So it's great. We have already scheduled committee time for this to pick up the discussion that the committee discussion, not with witnesses, that you asked for next week, and which I also think is a good idea. So Wednesday at 9:30, we have 45 minutes to an hour scheduled then for committee discussion.
Do we have a motion on the floor, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we're in discussion at the moment.
Oh, what's the motion?
The motion is to approve Commissioner Snyder's
Thank you.
as the commissioner.
So well, let's finish the vote and then I'll go back to our forestry discussion for next week. So if there's no further discussion, then I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator McCormick,
Yes.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes,
Senator Campion votes yes, Senator Bray.
Yes.
So all 5-0 zeros.
Um,
These
So I
are
wrote-
treated like bills, I believe, right? So they'll be up.
I think so. And I wrote to Secretary Bloomer yesterday, scanned the email. There were some details. So I'm going to reread that email. And then before we adjourn today, I'll let us all know exactly what he gave for instructions on how we turn these in. And then, so we have Chair Snelling in next week for our committee interview / conversation. And that should happen in time for committee vote, so that if we're taking them up perhaps next Friday on the floor, I'm not sure about that yet. We'll have, and Senator McCormick's going to take care of that one. We'll have 5 of us, 5 reports for commissioners and secretaries, chairs. Great. So back to forestry. So we have a lot of information from Commissioner Snyder. There's his the document Gesundheit. He provided a fairly lengthy and detailed document yesterday. That could be, people may want to review that. And then also I asked him to send over the 2015 and 16 reports on forestry, forest health, and there's some great information in there, especially around forest fragmentation. So let me just double check with Jude. Are those now posted to our committee page, the 15 and 16, 2015, 2016 forestry reports?
I believe they are. Everything he sent me yesterday, I put, it would be under yesterday's date. I'll double check.
Okay,
We're okay. And just one little, we had to adjust the schedule slightly for Wednesday, so the forestry discussion will be at 9, not 9:30, based
Okay.
on availability of Michael. And
Okay.
to switch that, yeah.
great. All right. So thank you for that. Yeah, so people may want to look through over the weekend or something like that and mull it over in terms of what do we want to talk about next Wednesday on this. Tuesday, we're going to be closing the gaps on some timely things. H108, the wetlands permit bill that we have, just to wrap up. We were about to vote it, and that stirred some, prompted an issue from 2 parties. One, to make sure that, just a clarification, everyone believes it's the intent of the law that if you're also subject to a FERC license, like a dam, that the permitting requirements under FERC will satisfy the alternative analysis that's required on section 401. So we'll have ANR and Velco in to confirm that, and VNRC to confirm that piece. AOT has an interest, and they'll be in. Then H433 is the big T-bill. There's a pair of sections, 28A and B are proposed to create an Act 250 exemption on road work. In talking prior to today's meeting with the past chair of Senate Transportation, Senator Westman, this issue has been around and sort of vexing people for a period of time. So right now it's in the T-bill. We'll take some testimony and try to size up what the best path forward is. My instinct is that it may be, because it's Act 250, it may be bigger than we're going to solve in 2 days, in which case I think a course of action, we'll figure out the best course of action as a committee next Tuesday on that one. So just a heads up, H108 and H433 are in our in-basket for Tuesday. The balance of the week, since we're doing housekeeping, we are going to, Senator McDonald is working with Michael O'Grady on language related to not the ship Adirondack per se, but I mean, I think my sense of where the committee is at, and please feel free to weigh in if I'm not stating if I'm not accurate about where I think the committee is, that given the vested rights doctrine, that we won't weigh in on the permit already granted to the MV Adirondack or Department of Historic Preservation for the reefing of the Adirondack, but that we'll propose perhaps something along the lines of a rulemaking to address this situation proactively going forward, so that, as committee members have said, we're certainly not interested in having the bottom of Lake Champlain become a junkyard in the name of creating interesting things to dive on. My next door neighbor growing up probably could make the argument that his 53 Packard should be down there. But
Well said, Mr. Chairman.
all right. So I don't know how that will break, but that's, I think, the direction we're going. Then we have our forestry discussion also scheduled for Wednesday. We have Chair Snelling in on Thursday and a confirmation vote that same day as well. We have time on Thursday and Friday. So if anyone on the committee is, I'm going to continue to work with Jude, looking at all the irons we have in the fire to make sure we keep our eye on everything. But if you have anything that you would like to discuss as a committee or feel like it's out there, please let Jude and me know, and we'll work to schedule it in on next week's schedule. All right. Any other, this is the time of year where things are moving sort of all over the building. And we're not there. So it's particularly hard to keep an eye on all the potential loose ends. The other major piece of work for us today, we're going to be taking up getting a start on Senator Westman's S-126, an act relating to collection, recycling, electronic waste. We've taken care of our gubernatorial appointees, and we have Commissioner Porter coming in to talk to us same way the other commissioners, given that we have money that we've never had to appropriate and efforts related, in his case, in Fish and Wildlife for the next 1, 3, 5 years. What's he emphasized? What's he recommendation? What are his recommendations for what to invest in? And then the last thing is on S-109. So although it's being handled formally as an amendment, it's the energy bill, the weatherization bill, and I asked Ellen to draft it that way. We'll actually finish up our amendments to 109 today.
Which energy bill?
That's the weatherization bill that has
Thank you. Okay.
everything in it, and then vote that forward as though we were going to amend 109 on the floor, but instead turn in our work to appropriations for their incorporating in our newest version, which is a strike all, to the big bill. So, Senator McDonald.
Yesterday in finance, Mr. Chair, when we were asked to look at the standard offer bill, the chair of finance asked this committee to take a look at it, and I want to report to you on a conversation I had.
Yeah.
Olivia Campbell testified before us about the standard offer bill and its expiration. And I called her last night on the bill and said that she'd made a pretty interesting case about trying to get the sun to shine at night, and that perhaps did she have any ideas about how we might put out a standard offer pilot that called for the reverse auction for the lowest possible price to deliver electricity that would come with solar panels and the batteries included, so that we could see a few setups that both made solar during the hours of the day when we had surplus and made it available at night, and learn some lessons from it, because that's the direction we have to go. She had some questions that we might want to listen to her about how utilities might pay for it, or whether we'd spread the risk amongst all the utilities, similar to the way Rygate was, and how do we deal with utilities that were already 100% renewable, which I don't know the answers to those, but it seemed like a direction that that we've been asked to look into, and maybe there's a match here. So I would hope to find some time to listen to her and see whether that makes any sense and looks towards how do we make the sunshine at night.
Okay, great. Thank you for working on that one. And speaking of things you're working on, have you been able to reach Mr. O'Grady yet on the possible rulemaking related to lake encroachment?
You mean like
The reefing of ships,
okay.
the sinking of things.
I've left a message. I also contacted Anthony Dexter Cooper, who is the LCAR person, so that they would work together. The amendment would be two parts. One was in one way sanctioning what has already been decided, and then having rules that would be set up. And as you said, perhaps someone like the Lamp Champlain Historical Society being part of the certification process in tandem with the Agency of Natural Resources, which deals with the contaminant part. So,
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So we'll see if we can tidy that up next week, schedule time. So Jude, I think we have time. It's good that we're having this conversation right now. So we have time, and let's look at the standard offer proposal. Do you think that we'll have something ready for discussion by Wednesday? Can we?
I think Skim would be eager to do it on Tuesday or.
Okay. Right. Well, Tuesday, I think is full. Okay, so we'll schedule standard offer and generation with storage as a topic for Wednesday. We'll, along with the rulemaking related to Adirondack. A couple other things. So I just want to also remind us of things that we concluded in the last week. The Fish and Wildlife, Senator Campion's Fish and Wildlife bill. I think we've all received a lot of emails on that one. And it's one of those reminders that it's a topic of both controversy and broad interest. So having talked with committee members about it, and we concluded, Senator Campion, the only one I could not reach by phone last weekend was you, unfortunately, and you're the sponsor, so I apologize. But I think just for anyone trying to keep track of all the things on our plate, that we said that we would roll that forward to the beginning of next year, especially given that a public hearing in person is quite different than a Zoom session, and it seemed like one where we'd want to host a public hearing. And might need, quite a bit of space to do that. Well, who knows what the rules of the road will be for meetings at that point. But the other thing that's I'm still getting some emails on, maybe you are as well, is the bottle bill. It is still in House Appropriations, so I don't know if it is going to stay on the wall there. But given the calendar. I'm expecting it to come out at some point. I just don't know what's going on sort of behind the scenes to prepare it.
They voted on it last night on the House floor.
Well, they did.
Yeah. So it passed last night.
Okay, well, I missed its movement. Sorry.
It was about 100 to, I think, 50, something like that. And so it's on its way. I know I sent you an email just a little while ago, Mr. Chair, just asking, given related to that, exactly what you're talking about, will this be taken up this year or next? And you probably haven't had time to think about it, but it should be here, I would think, first thing Tuesday.
Okay, thanks. So I have been thinking about it because who knew it's been in the offing for maybe 6 weeks. So as each
10
week
years,
goes,
15 years,
yeah,
20 years. 20 years ago, Maine did it, I think.
as the longer it was delayed, the more I felt like that the less likely that we'd be able to do it justice when it got here. It's again, it's another perennial controversial topic, and there is definitely some. It's bigger than the nickel goes to a dime. It's reconsidering how the solid waste flows. So, for instance, expansion to PET plastic and more wine bottles and more products in aluminum to have a deposit, and then that will change the way all that material flows through. A lot more material through redemption centers, less through the MRFs. This committee's already had discussions around the pros and cons of each, but I think there are pros and cons to each approach, and we really need the time. So my sense is, when the bottle bill reaches us, I don't know how other people feel about it. My recommendation would be that we would schedule it for next year, that there's not adequate time for really looking into it.
So better hire someone, Mr. Chair, to pick up the cans and bottles on our front lawns, because we're grateful for the ones that don't have gasoline and rags coming out of the top. But the pros are lobbying this one, and they'll be on it. So
okay, well, yeah. There's the thing called the calendar, and it's pretty ineluctable. So anyway, if people are really game for it, then let's have that committee conversation next week when we get the thing, and we'll see where people want to go. I'm
can
just.
we watch the Kramer episode?
Is there a Kramer episode on the bottle bill?
Oh, his plan to take load up truckloads of bottles and truck them to Michigan to get the 10-cent deposit.
Well, apparently that already happens from our neighbor to the
No,
east.
it's anyway, that was 20 years ago, or probably would anyway. It's a have fun. Watch the episode.
Okay,
It's on topic.
I'll Google that one. Okay, so who knows what we do? Committee will get it. People can mull it over, and we'll make a decision next week. All right, so I don't see anything else at the moment on our to-do list, and it's 9:30, so we're actually right on schedule to turn now. Anything else? Thank you everyone for helping. This is definitely the season we're keeping an eye on things moving in different committees. People know what's going on. Oh, and Senator McCormick, doubling back to the Adirondack. So I did confirm with Senator Benning that that Institutions is trying to get the cap bill out pretty much ASAP. If we have language in time and you still have possession of the capital bill, that we would send the rulemaking language to you all, and Senator Benning was amenable to including it in the capital bill. If that ship has already sailed, he was amenable to just have us. Sorry, it's hard to avoid.
It's not sailing, it's being sung. I get you. We're not done with the cap.
We'll sink that boat when we get to it.
Yes.
Yes.
There was a House member that used to say, "We'll burn that bridge when we get to it," and that's become one of my favorites.
My
Okay.
grandmother used to say, don't throw stones at glass houses.
Um, Okay,
It's called missing the point.
yeah. So if the capital bill is already out, Senator Benning said, that he'd be happy to have us to bring it to the floor, and that he believed the institutions committee would speak favorably about the proposal. All right, so I think that really is the last of the housekeeping for a moment. And with that, I'd like to then turn to S-126, an act relating to collection and recycling of electronic waste. And we have a guest in this morning, Mr. Alcorn, Vice President of Environmental Affairs and Energy Sustainability at the Consumer Technology Association. Good morning, Mr. Alcorn. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, good morning, Chair Bray. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about what I like to say it's my favorite subject, electronics recycling.
Okay, well, it's good that it's your favorite subject, and you're perfectly matched to the job. We've had only a very brief introduction to the bill, so if you could, sort of take it from high level and how further down you want to go, that would be great for helping the committee come up to speed on the subject.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity to talk about S-126. My name is Walter Alcorn. I work for the Consumer Technology Association, and we're the trade association that represents manufacturers and retailers of consumer electronics. So basically the products that are the target of the Vermont Electronics Recycling Program. So I represent the manufacturers and retailers of those products. Been working on electronics recycling issues for a long time, a couple of decades, and both on the public and the private sector side. But just very quickly to dive in, what this bill does is it changes several administrative procedures in the existing Vermont Electronics Recycling Program. And when this law was put in place a little over a decade ago, as an industry, we did not have what's known as a producer responsibility organization or a PRO. And I think many of you are familiar with that. There have been in other industries, paint, mattresses, there have been these producer responsibility organizations set up. So we didn't have one 10 years ago. We actually do have one now, and we call it the Manufacture Clearinghouse. And it is basically our producer responsibility organization. It's been piloted in another state, in Illinois, in terms of the implementation of the administrative parts of that. But I want to emphasize that the producer responsibility organization basically is intended to adapt to whatever that state's program is. So what we've tried to do is to take how the Vermont program is currently operating and not change anything other than how it's administered on the back end. So in other words, what we're hoping to do is basically take a system right now where the department bills manufacturers, literally sends them invoices, and then the department hires a contractor who then hires recyclers and other vendors to run the program. And frankly, to turn that function over to the industry producer responsibility organization, the PRO. So that's the overall idea. There are a couple things that I would note that are included in here that I would consider improvements or maybe modernizations to the program, things that weren't either available or weren't really high on the agenda a decade or so ago. First of all, there is a provision that creates incentives for manufacturers who design and produce more environmentally sensitive products. So basically, if you're if you are making products that meet certain environmental thresholds, then you would get some credit for that. That's sort of a holy grail in the extended producer responsibility world. So there is basically that provision in there. And the other thing is, we also are support the idea that that when the department reviews the annual plan for this electronics recycling program, that they also look to minimize greenhouse gas emissions. I think as everybody knows, the logistics involved in these types of programs do involve, trucks, they involve moving things around. And so we're suggesting that that's a good idea. So thank you for that consideration. Those are modernization things. But just to underscore what's not changing, it doesn't reduce the collection opportunities provided to Vermont residents. It actually would put into statute, it would roughly double the statutory requirement for collection sites. But this has actually been implemented through the system over the last several years. So we're suggesting go ahead and put that into statute in terms of the number of collection opportunities provided. It also doesn't change the financing model. This is still 100% paid for by manufacturers, 100% paid for by producers. I know that's not always the case with some other industry producer responsibility organizations. We're also not, we're supportive of continuing to pay for the department's registration fees. So basically to make sure the department has funds to regulate the program and to oversee it and make sure there's a level playing field. We think that's really important. And also we don't support any change, and there's no change in this, to who actually can access the program and receive the benefits of it. So that's it in a nutshell, and be happy to dive down deeper into any of this stuff. And again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about my favorite subject. I'm kind of weird that way, but.
Well, we appreciate weirdness in this committee because there are a lot of specialized topics that we end up digging into. And there's always more to the story than first meets the eye. Senator Westman, as your sponsor, do you have anything you want to add to that, the conversation at this point?
No, I think it would be helpful if Mr. Alcorn would tell us what they plan to do.
Sure.
And why this is better than what we've got now.
Yeah, basically, what we're trying to do is frankly to do this not just in Vermont, but there's a bill hearing in Maine coming up later this month. The idea, frankly, is to administer these various electronics recycling programs, which right now are very much stovepiped one state to another, and to create a little bit of efficiencies in the back end on the administration side. So that's the idea. This is really I would say a longer term effort to try to build some efficiencies in the program. I mean, it's a little bit like for us the 12 stages of grief. We fought this. We were angry. We're now into acceptance and figuring out, well, how can the program actually work better and work for everybody.
So can you do a little compare and contrast, like what happens to electronic waste currently in Vermont versus what would happen under this new program?
Yeah, it actually would be virtually the same. Currently, electronic waste is collected in more than 100 locations around the state, and it is then consolidated and recycled by a recycling vendor that's hired by the state contractor, and then that basically in electronics recycling, the various electronics are they're different recyclers that have different processes, but typically they get dismantled into individual parts and components and separated that way, and then are sent to downstream processors for further recycling. So they're fairly complicated products. You know, they've got plastic, they've got glass, they've got metals, and so that process would not change. What would change under this is basically the actual hiring of the recycler would be done by the producer responsibility organization or within the producer responsibility organization. That would be different. The state would no longer be collecting money from manufacturers and then hiring a contractor who then hires the recycler. The other thing that that would be different is those modernization pieces that I talked about in terms of the consideration. They're also, and this would be one of the things that would be different. So the department would be reviewing a plan annually, basically reviewing the Manufacture Clearinghouse PRO plan annually. And that's, by the way, very important for us. You know, the lawyers tell me that that basically because the manufacturers I represent are competitors, it's very important that the state have a very active regulatory role in the plan, in the program, in order to allay any concerns about antitrust. So we not only welcome department active involvement, frankly, we absolutely need it.
Sure. So I'm thinking of this compared to our bottle program, where we have a deposit, sort of a extended producer responsibility program of another sort. There are people, manufacturers, bottlers, who have agreed to commingle their products, and they've opted in to that pool of having their materials handled as a single group, and others who have chosen not to join in. So what's the situation on electronics? Are all the electronic manufacturers of the world apt to join your PRO, or will some want to, for whatever reason, stay out? And then how would we handle those exceptions?
It's a great question. And that is something we definitely have thought about and actually have a little bit of experience in Illinois during the past couple of years where again, on an administrative basis, it's been piloted. There is a requirement that basically there can only be one manufacturer clearinghouse. It's a requirement that the clearinghouse has to have at least 50% of the overall manufacturer obligation. So in effect, that makes it one. That mirrors language from the Illinois program. We do have a provision from time to time. I'm sure, you know, at some point there could be a manufacturer that would not want to comply through the Manufacturer Clearinghouse PRO. So it does provide an option for an individual manufacturer basically to set up a parallel system throughout the state and basically provide the same level of collection system that the Clearinghouse PRO provides. That is a pretty high bar, even for, you know, a smaller state like Vermont. You know, given 100 different collection locations, you know, to be required, we frankly don't expect that to happen. And it certainly, if it ever would happen, I guess one way to look at it, it would certainly be a bounty for Vermont residents. You know, you get twice as many collection opportunities. But again, because of just the economics of somebody setting up a parallel system, it's not expected.
Right. Yeah, it would seem okay. And I'm guessing that both programs are regulated, whether you're choosing to go it alone as an individual manufacturer or be part of the PRO. The performance standards would be the same in terms of handling the materials, the incentives, et cetera.
That's exactly right.
Okay. the incentive sounds a little like there's some European programs around packaging that are tiered to encourage people to basically manufacturers can save money by using more environmentally friendly materials. So is that the underlying philosophy here? Encourage people to save money at the manufacturing level by using materials that, well, can you say a little more? How does that part work?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's been a, it's been discussed under a number of different terms, modulated fees. There are different things that have been tried over the years. And the idea is this, you really would want these extended producer responsibility programs to also provide incentives to manufacturers to make, more environmentally preferred products and more recyclable products. So what the challenge with doing this, one of the challenges is first of all, the economic incentive for any individual state program is probably going to be pretty limited, because you really need more of a larger scale to have much of an economic, for it to be an economic driver for any particular company. The second thing is the way, if it's completely collective, in other words, if the system and the obligation is completely collectivized, if I'm a manufacturer and I make a fantastically recyclable content with 100% recycled material, I may not get the benefit. The overall system would, but it wouldn't come back to me. So what we have suggested in here, and it is actually evolving as well, is that the Manufacture Clearinghouse in the administration of the program, including administering obligations for recycling upon manufacturers, that they would have to establish a credit system of some sort that would be reviewed by the department, again, in the annual plan, that would provide up to 50% reduction of the obligation for recycling. Now, that's just moving it around within the overall obligation. It doesn't reduce the system obligation to the residents of Vermont.
Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, I think that's a forward-looking way to look at whether we're talking about a television or the packaging that you buy a tool in. There's still a package there, and it still has an end of life to be figured out up front. I'm noticing anything I get that originates in the EU lately, it includes return instructions about when you're done with this product, you can send it back to the manufacturer for disassembly and recycling, etc. So, so Illinois, how long has Illinois been running their program?
It's been going 2 full years, and I'm a little cautious about saying that is because they do have their own quirks in their system, and
sure.
This PRO was put in place basically building on what Illinois had enacted a decade ago as well. So yeah, it is. We've had 2 years and full implementation, a little more than that now, and no manufacturer has jumped out of it. It's everybody, all the manufacturers are working through the clearinghouse.
Okay. So I'm trying to think of the attraction to manufacturers. I would think one would be that this could be another step towards homogeneous laws. You might build enough states on the same platform that eventually the feds take it over or something like that. Are there some economies that come out of this from the manufacturing side by creating a PRO? Or
yeah, there absolutely are, and one of the things that took us so long to get a PRO in place is some people have described some of the companies in my industry as cowboys. We have a lot of companies that want to do their own thing, and they basically adopt their own recycling requirements, minimums. And so our PRO actually allows for groups of manufacturers to come together and comply through that PRO. So So one economies of scale is particularly as we get multiple states using this system, then frankly, it would allow manufacturers who are basically can focus one group of manufacturers may focus, on New England, while another group of manufacturers may, focus on the Midwest, for example. And that does provide some efficiencies on the manufacturing side. And on the harmonization, I agree, that's a very long-term thing, but this is just sort of a small suggested step along
Sure.
that line.
So you said Maine is considering a substantially similar law this next month.
That's right. They are. Yeah, actually, the 26th. So in 10 days, that hearing is first hearing.
Yep. And how about where things are processed? I visited an electronics recycling facility actually in Middlebury, Vermont, but I don't really know what the flow of electronic waste is. If most of it stays in Vermont, all of it stays in Vermont, some of it leaves. Can you say something about where, because you also mentioned greenhouse gas emissions and trucking. So can you say something about what you're envisioning for how materials would be handled, where they be handled, how they move around?
Yeah, I think my understanding is currently in the Vermont program, most of the electronics are actually recycled in Massachusetts that are collected in Vermont. And that could change, that could evolve over time as recyclers come and go, move into the market, that kind of thing. One of the things that we also would want to make sure is that that recyclers not only meet the current recycling standards that the department requires, but also meets private third-party certification standards. So this is important for transparency. We actually see these as minimums, and when our companies and our through the group plans and the PRO hire recyclers. Frankly, there's brand risk and PR risk, and so those end up being very much the minimums, and the requirements go above that. Most I'd say most recycling activity does stay in the region at least, and again, we think it's the right time to take into consideration greenhouse gas emissions when looking at all those logistics.
Okay. Great. So this committee is familiar with different certification programs for different things, but I don't know that we've ever talked about a third-party certification on electronic waste recycling. Is there already a national group that does that? I mean, something like LEED for building construction. Can you say something more about that?
Yeah, there are actually two programs that are out there. One is called R2. It's operated by a group called SERI, S-E-R-I. It's a little bit older, well, only I guess by 6 months or so. It basically was formed, 15 years or so ago. US EPA got the ball rolling on that. There's also another one called E-Stewards, which formed right after R2 got started. It's actually run by the Basel Action Network, which is focused on keeping electronics from being exported to developing countries where they could be mishandled. And it's interesting over time, and our suggestion is that basically, pick one, one or the other needs to be third-party certified. At this point, I'm told, and I have to be careful about this for antitrust reasons, but I'm told that most of the manufacturers are requiring the E-Stewards certification for recycling that they pay for.
Thank you. Great. That's a very helpful introduction. Have you had any conversations at all with our agency and natural resource folks like Kathy Jameson, who runs the solid waste program?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have. And Kathy has been actually very engaging on this. We first started having discussions about where there might be some efficiencies in the program, gosh, maybe a couple of years ago. The idea of actually coming back and updating the statute really got started last April after some, or gosh, maybe it was February, I can't remember, right around when the pandemic started. We have had some additional discussions with her. Frankly, there are a number of, this is pretty technical at some level. And so we have gone back and forth with Kathy and her team, and would be happy to engage on any additional questions or suggestions that come from them too.
Sure. Okay, great. Well, so I've monopolized the question asking, but so let me pause and look around and see if there are other questions from other members of the committee. Great. Well, thank you. It's a very helpful introduction plus then some, and that's just the right amount for moving us along at this point. So committee, would you like to hear from A&R next week on the bill? Okay. And is there, Senator Westman, anyone else that you?
That's what I was going to ask Mr. Alcorn, who else he thought we might have, should have in.
Boy, that's a good question. Maybe, probably a mix of, manufacturer, retailer, perhaps, and then collectors, so A&R definitely, and then folks involved in the collection as well.
Sure. And there is a, it happens to be a constituent of mine, neither here nor there, who runs a collection business. I think it's the one that's based most, there's a facility in Middlebury, but I think he also manages maybe a larger business in Massachusetts related to it. So follow up. Okay,
Yep.
I'll learn some more about that piece of it. We also did some work. It was packaging oriented, but that's why I brought up the whole European tiered system and all that. And I'm forgetting the name, but there's a group that's we have had in before on solid waste issues, and so we could check in with them as well. Okay,
great.
Senator Campion, you had your hand up a moment ago. I don't know if you had something you wanted to add at this point. Okay, let's see. He's stepped away from the desk. If he comes back in time, we'll add something. All right, great. Well, thank you, Mr. Alcorn. And seeing no other committee questions or discussion, then that brings us to 10. And today, this is like a tour. We're on to another topic. But that was the perfect amount for this morning. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks again for joining us. So committee, we're back to the energy/weatherization bill, formerly S109, an act related to Vermonters Enhanced Energy Savings Act. Ms. Schakowsky has revised based on requests that I've been fielding from members of the committee and others in the last 48 hours. So for the sake of expediting, I've gone ahead and asked her to make those changes. They're all highlighted and they're all up for discussion. But in case we're in agreement on them, then we already have them in the strike all, and we would be set. So with that, Ms. Schakowsky, good morning. Thank you. I'm guessing you have the regular setup, a highlighted copy of 109. Okay, if you could screen share and walk us through that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Sure. So good morning. Posted on your website today under my name. We're calling it draft 6.1. This is a little unusual because you don't actually have possession of the bill. So the intro language right at the beginning, I don't think it matters a ton, but it's not a bill that you have, so just for reference, that language is a little different, but section 1, I left the emissions number highlighted, but it hasn't changed since the last time we spoke. That was based on a recommendation of the calculations done by Energy Action Network and Efficiency Vermont. So this is different than as originally passed by this committee. But then the first major change is in section 2. So this language previously was in the statutory scheme creating the Office of Economic Opportunity. There was a directive in there about meeting the efficiency goals in section 1. However, there was a suggestion from the Office of Economic Opportunity to actually move that into the Home Weatherization Assistance Program language. So moving it from their enabling language to the program's enabling language. So this draft has new language on page 3. And so the intro language is: the director of the Office of Economic Opportunity, in collaboration with the weatherization system service providers and other stakeholders, shall develop the state program so that it will include, and then there's new language on page 3 in yellow, working to achieve the state's energy savings and carbon emission reduction goals, including those in section 581. So I don't think this is a change in policy. I think this is just a change in location for where this language makes more sense potentially.
Okay. Senator Westman, you were the one who had originally brought up this to make it explicit, and Ms. Phillips of OEO then suggested that it be put into the program's enabling language. And are you fine with installing it there?
It's a step forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So then in section 3, in regards to the Public Utility Commission proceeding, so as has been in the previous drafts, this language directs the PUC to open a proceeding to investigate implementing a volumetric thermal energy efficiency charge. So the prior draft had on line 12 directing it to 30 VSA 209D3, which is the thermal energy efficiency language related to Efficiency Vermont currently. Senator Bray, I don't know if you want to speak to this language, but this draft strikes that language and just I add there's language highlighted in yellow that now reads, including those programs implemented pursuant to 209 E and G.
So 209 E and G, keep an eye on me here, Counselor, are the thermal energy and process fuels programs that are currently in statute. So as you'll see, this really makes this first paragraph that includes the highlighted phrase more consistent with a paragraph to follow, because we don't really know at this point. We're talking about raising money through a thermal energy efficiency charge, and all along we've been somewhat agnostic about exactly how those funds will be distributed, who will receive them to do what work. The thought is that it will be consistent with current statutes, so it still has those current statute cross references, 209 E and G, but the language before was a little narrower and might have precluded the PUC making a recommendation on something other than funding sort of the status quo. And the whole point is to have, it could be the status quo, just needs more funding, or we might be looking to innovate. And so that's why it has slightly broader language and includes this, including those, so that if they come up with something novel, they won't be precluded from bringing it forward to us. So it just widens the scope of consideration so that the PUC can make their best recommendation, not be overly constrained. So does that seem like a fair characterization, Mr. Council?
I would also add that this bill establishes a new energy savings fund account, and this committee did discuss whether or not the thermal efficiency charge would potentially end up in that account as opposed to the existing electric energy efficiency fund. Right.
Thank you for that reminder. Right, and so the bottom line difference there, from my point of view, is the other one is an electrical energy efficiency charge, and this one is thermal. So it could be they would end up getting blended together, but we don't know that yet. And so this doesn't make that choice up front for everybody. It leaves it open. Okay. Does that make sense to the committee? Okay, great. If there are no other questions, let's proceed. Thanks.
Sure. So then a small change in section 4. First, so this section 4 includes the weatherization workforce sort of working group, and it has a list of organizations that should contribute to the report that will be drafted. And the previous list included the Vermont Housing and Finance Agency, and they have been struck from this list.
Okay. I think that was at their request, right? Thank you.
So then finally, in the appropriation section, the last time this committee was working on this language, there was the final appropriation that was on the list was $2 million to go to innovative, potentially on the meter billing. But your committee took testimony that perhaps that program is already in the works for VHFA or another organization, so that remaining $2 million needed somewhere else to go. So I think yesterday you heard from the community action agencies. So new language has been added that reads 1.5 million to the community action agencies to support at least 5 financial and clean energy coaches and 1 coordinator to assist low and moderate income Vermonters in comprehensive financial coaching, including budgeting, budget reduction, credit building, and asset development, with an emphasis on reducing their reliance on carbon fuel-based technologies. And then $500,000 to the community action agencies to support the Mileage Smart program, which was established in Act 59 of 2019 as amended.
Great. So, yeah, I thought, well, I'll speak for myself on this one. This is something we talked about maybe 2 months ago, and then we had a refresher yesterday. And I think the 2 things that were compelling for me about it is, one, it takes this counseling question that we've been wrestling with and really makes it more clear that it's not just going to be restricted to counseling related to weatherization. For instance, it's broadened to with an emphasis on reducing reliance on carbon fuel-based technologies. So that opens up the transportation opportunity. We know that transportation is the largest expense that people face in terms of fossil fuel use. It's also the largest source of emissions. So I think it's great that, from my point of view, that we step up our work on that area and then put our shoulder to the wheel with the remaining 500,000 to support the Mileage Smart program, which will then be statewide. So, Senator Westman, do you have anything you'd like to share on that one?
Yes, I was about to raise my hand. So, and it may be in the authorizing piece at the back of this, but the 1.5, I think we envision over 3 years. I think the
Right.
500 to the community action in support would be in the authorization for the upcoming fiscal year. But the 1.5, I think we envision carrying the community action agencies over the 3 years of the ARPA funds.
Thank you for that reminder. Well, you serve on appropriations. Is that something that we ought to specify here, or how do we do that?
You know, I would, in a number of places with the ARPA money, I'll take, for example, they appropriated some money because I was thinking about this morning. I'm going to talk to Senator Campion about it. There is a scholarship program that in VSEC, and it says we're going to do it over 2 years. You know, we've done various things. The ARPA money doesn't have to be spent until December of 24. And what we envisioned was that the community action agencies would have this money in each of 500,000 each over the 3-year period.
Okay. So would it be appropriate then to weave in some sort of phrase like over FY 22, 23, and 24? Or how do we do that?
I think you could do it. I think you could do it any of those, and it would be 20. I think you could do it anyway like that.
Okay.
What I wouldn't want that to do is you appropriate the 1.5 million in 22. The 1.5 million, the community action agencies don't spend all of it. They spend, they do 5 positions, and I'm looking at 5 or 6 positions. You know, we're talking 85,000 a position. They spend $500,000 of it in this fiscal year's budget. We haven't delineated that it's all supposed to carry forward, and someone decides, well, they didn't use the money in the 22 budget, even though it's in the fund. We should recommend taking the money.
Okay.
I think we need to make it clear that this is designed to carry them for the full length of the 3 years that we have authorization of this money.
Okay. So it sounds like 3 years. Do we need also to say that these are equal contributions? You know, like the notion, or you let them figure out how to spread it out?
I think I think we did it $1.5 million thinking it would be 3 equal booms, but
Okay. So we need the FY 22, 3, 4 language. We need the equal sort of increments, and then we need the any monies not expended during the period roll forward to in the same effort.
yes.
Okay. So, Ms. Chakowski, is that enough information to revise this section?
Sure, I did have a question. I don't know how many community action agencies there are.
5.
Okay, so,
And that's why it's one position for each community action
Okay.
agency and one for OEO, which is the administrative over umbrella.
okay.
And I don't know if that, Senator Westman, I don't have that level of detail on where that, the 6th person you just referenced is, if it's an OEO staffer. or
I
it
think
could be a
what
staff.
it was envisioned is the coordinator would stay in OEO.
Okay. So do you want to make that specific or leave it as is? Totally up to you. And I'll think aloud with the committee here. I'm thinking if we say M1 coordinator, that would allow OEO and the CAAs, the community action agencies, to make it. I don't know what they're going to decide. Would leave it to them to decide, or would you like to specify? This is
Well,
really
the umbrella organization is OEO,
right.
and they all get their money dispersed through OEO. So if you're going to have a coordinator, I would think it would be somebody at OEO,
Okay.
and you and the reason we said, it says here, support at least 5 financial and clean energy coaches, is that what implies is one coach for each community action agency and a coach, and the coach, it would make sense that the overlying organization that they all get their money through is OEO.
Okay. Certainly makes sense. So can you add a little more specificity, Mr. Kowski, to that the coaches are at the community action agency level and the coordinator is at the Office of Economic Opportunity?
Sure.
Thank you. And we can get feedback on this. I would love to have this. Let's say that that's tentatively everyone out there who's an interested party, including this committee, agrees to that. Then we would, with that edit, we would be done. I told appropriations we would finish up by today, so I'd love to do that, but we can have others confirm that understanding over the next, over the weekend, basically. Okay, great. Anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
Okay, and effective on passage, is that how we left it? Or on July?
Except for the appropriations.
Oh, that's right.
Those are July 1.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so let me check in with the committee. So again, it's drafted as a formal amendment, but it's really, I think it's a recommendation from this committee that will be transmitted to appropriations. Are people content with our work product?
Looks great.
Okay, so for the sake of being able to report to appropriations accurately, let me just do it this way. So all those in favor of advancing this strike all to appropriations, please say aye. And
Aye.
aye.
Yeah.
Okay, so 500. Great. I just want to have that squared away. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been a long haul. There's more work to do, but to me, there's a lot of promise in what we're launching in this body of work. So thank you to everyone for your contribution and your patience. Was not a very traditional way to develop a bill. I don't think I'll try not to go through that experience again of not having a draft for so long. That's my bad, not anybody else's. All right, so we are a little ahead of schedule. Commissioner Porter's due in at 11. Ms. Chakowski, I'm sorry to ask a question that you may be dreading because you have 12 things happening in the next hour. Is there any chance that you can make those changes to the last section we just discussed and we could see them when we come back at 11? Is that a possibility?
Sure. The only slight potential no is I am waiting for the house to get off the floor. I think they're still on the floor. So if they get off the floor in the next 10 minutes, I may not be able to, but I can do that right now.
I'm going to ask for a roll call on their side, 2 of them. So that'll buy you some time. Right. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. So let's come back. Commissioner Porter's due at 11. So if we get here a minute or